Hey guys, welcome to another video from Historic Militaria. Today we're going to be looking at a C-96 Broomhandle, which is a pretty iconic and familiar gun to a lot of people. Pretty much everyone in the firearms community knows the shape of one of these, and certainly Star Wars popularized them with using the broomhandle as the basis for Han Solo's blaster. This is a little bit of a unique one in that it is actually in 9mm and not 9mm parabellum like most people think all of them were made in. This one is actually 9x25 Mauser export, and this is one of the rarer Mauser calibers. The majority of Mauser broomhandles were made in 7.63x25 or 30 Mauser, which is a bottlenecked 30 caliber by 25mm long round. The 9x25 was just a standard 30 Mauser round that was not bottlenecked, so a straight cased 9mm round, but 9x25, whereas 9mm Luger that everyone is familiar with today as shooters is a 9x19, so substantially shorter case for your modern Luger shell. A lot of people don't know what they're looking at when they see one of these, and a lot of times they're just assumed that it's 9mm Luger, but they actually came before the majority of 9mm Luger broom handles were ever made. And without bogging down into a lot of technical everything, in World War I, Mauser got a contract to produce up to 150,000 so-called Red 9 9mm Luger guns, and those were actually used by the German military for World War I. This is not one of those. It predates that. It has nothing to do with that contract, and those in general are the only factory 9mm Luger guns, or that Red 9 contract. There's a few that weren't as special orders, but the majority are going to be from that contract. So the 9x25, as the name implies, was primarily for export, and Mauser envisioned this round being used in South America, Africa, sort of not in Europe for whatever reason. So you'll find a lot of these guns went to Asia, South America, Africa. A lot of big game hunters actually use this as a backup for self-defense. Externally, they look identical to a 30 caliber Mauser. Really, just looking at it, it's impossible to tell that this is actually one of the 9x25s. There's no caliber designation on it. Turn it over, you've got your standard tangent sight up to 1,000 meters, your nice fire bluing, and your serial numbered bolt, of course. And really, the extractor looks the same, the bolt looks the same. Your standard markings here over the chamber, if my camera will focus, and your serial number in the usual place. And as you can see, this is in the 130,000 serial number range. So this gun would date to about 1908 to 1910, I would guess. So definitely pre-war, because wartime World War I wartime guns were not in 9 export. Really, 1914 was the last year any of these were made for Mauser broom handles. The cartridge itself enjoyed a resurgence in the 30s, and we'll get into that in a bit. But the initial run of these came from about 1904 in the 50,000 serial number range. And we'll take a look at more of these in the future, but this is just a good example to kind of get familiar with. But about 1904, Mauser decided to introduce this cartridge, and so they made some then, and they sort of sporadically made them in batches up until about 1914, as I said, and then World War I put a stop to that, and in 1916, they got a contract to make about 150,000 of the 9 Lugers. So World War I put an end to Mauser making any more broom handles in 9 export. The cartridge itself, in about 1930, Mauser kind of reintroduced it as a submachine gun cartridge, and it was pretty widespread. There were, I believe, the S100 and various iterations of the MP28, I believe, were chambered in 9 export, as well as some Hungarian guns, Swiss guns. A lot of people liked it because it's a really hard-hitting, powerful cartridge, very flat as well. But looking at this gun, really, as I said, very standard broom handle. Your typical grips from that time period, very closely spaced ridges here for gripping, and kind of gives rise to the name broom handle. You can see why. Turn around, take a look at this. We are looking at where your serial number is going to be, and it's there, and it's going to be repeated, and then the last 3 is going to be on the hammer. And then take a look at this side. You've just got your Waffen Fabric Mauser marking, very typical, very standard. Really no way externally to tell what this gun is without looking at the muzzle. And we'll look at the muzzle. This gun has been cleared already, so don't get on me for not checking it for you. You can see automatically that is 9mm. It is larger bore than your 30 Mauser. But in case you had any doubts, you can actually, and doing this one-handed is always interesting. So let's set the camera down. And we will open this guy up. I always cock the hammer on these first, and then pull out. So you're going to actually be looking into the magazine, the internal magazine on these. And you can see there's a floor plate there. And you can see that divot right here. There's that divot which actually helps feed your straight-cased 9mm round, because your 30 broom handle round was actually a bottlenecked cartridge and it did not need those. You will find that divot on some, but not all, later Red 9s and 9 Parabellum. Some people will tell you it's all. I can tell you from quite personal experience, viewing a lot of them, that not all of them have that. Also, not all 9 exports have that. This gun has been prior disassembled and all the parts do match. So this is a factory piece that went with this, and it's factory divot. And obviously this gun was purpose made to be a 9 export. The other way you can tell is a 9mm Parabellum round dropped in the chamber, goes all the way in and will not be picked up by the extractor because the chamber is too long for a 9x19. It's meant for a 9x25. And since the 9x25 actually headspaces on the case rim, or not the case rim, the case mouth, you would expect it to be a longer chamber. Other than that, the gun is identical. You've got your bolt face and firing pin. Internally, the same as any other broom handle. You've got your overly complicated and long firing pin here with your hammer and all this. We'll do a video on broom handle disassembly in the future. It's a pretty interesting gun to actually take apart and take a look at. But I just wanted to show you sort of a pretty unusual variant of C-96 and kind of talk about a caliber that doesn't get a lot of notice. Everyone just sees a 9 broom handle and assumes, oh, it's 9 Parabellum, and they're not. Keep in mind that a lot of 9mm guns that are not in the Red 9 serial number range were actually rebored later after their use elsewhere. A lot came back from China in really awful shape, and I believe in the 80s a company called Federal Ordnance actually rebored a number of barrels, just plain bore them out from 7.63 to 9mm, because a 9mm will work in these guns, so they just decided to do that. and it has been done by custom gunsmiths and whatnot. So just always kind of be cognizant of what you're looking at when you're looking at a 9mm broom handle. This one, obviously, pre-World War I gun. If you find a 9mm broom handle pre-World War I, good chance it's going to be a 9x25. You can take a look by safely dropping a 9mm parabellum in there, and if it drops all the way, you're probably looking at a 9x25. We'll look at some others. There's actually a small contract of 9x25 exports that has some very different markings than typical Mauser, and no one's really sure where they went to, and we'll try and get our hands on one of those in the future and take a look at that. But I hope you've enjoyed seeing just an unusual Mauser gun. And we'll be looking at more broom handles, more firearms in general, helmets, ordnance, all kinds of things in the near future. Thank you for watching, and if you have anything you'd like to see us do a video on, let us know in the comments, and by all means, if we can do it, we'll do it for you. Thanks for watching.